Story 1. Inappropriate comments at work. At my job, there are always a few female colleagues who make personal comments about the men. Once during a meeting, a colleague made a comment about how one of the managers had a melting smile. Everyone laughed, but I felt uncomfortable because I knew if the situation were reversed, the reaction would be very different. I've also heard women talking possessively about male friends, as if they had some exclusive right to them. This creates a strange and unequal work environment. If you like following stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Story 2. Social media and inappropriate comments. On social media, I see women making inappropriate comments on photos of young models. Once I saw a woman comment, "Let me know when you turn 18" on a young man's photo. I couldn't help but think about how the reaction would be if a man made the same comment about a young female model. He would probably be immediately criticized and could even face more serious consequences. This inequality in reactions is frustrating and unfair. Story 3. Sarcasm and manipulation. My ex-girlfriend used sarcasm in a way that left me confused and uncomfortable. At the beginning of our relationship, I thought it was just her funny way of communicating. She would say things like, "You look so dressed up today," in a way that seemed like a disguised critique. There were times when she made comments about my clothes or my hair, using a sarcastic tone that made me question whether she was really trying to compliment or belittle me. These comments didn't stop there. She frequently made jokes about my physical appearance, my work performance, and even about my friends. At first, I thought she was just joking, but over time, these jokes started to affect my confidence and self-esteem. I tried to adapt to what she said, changing my style or behavior in hopes of pleasing her, but it seemed like it was never enough. The situation worsened after our breakup. Her friends, whom I thought were neutral, started attacking me on social media. They made sarcastic and critical comments about me, just like she did. I realized she had manipulated the narrative of our relationship to make herself look like the victim while painting me as the villain. They spread rumors and false stories about me, making me feel isolated and attacked. One of her friends even created a Facebook group where they shared exaggerated or completely false stories about me. It was painful to see people I considered friends turning against me based on her lies. This experience made me realize how manipulative and cruel some people can be, especially in moments of vulnerability. I began to doubt myself and socially isolate to avoid more pain. I tried to focus on work and hobbies, but the shadow of what was happening on social media was hard to ignore. I also began to doubt new people entering my life, always fearing they might be manipulated in the same way. Over time, I realized I needed to take action to protect my mental health. I blocked her friends on social media and adjusted my privacy settings. I also sought professional help to deal with the emotional impact of constant manipulation and sarcasm. It was a long process, but I started to regain my confidence and rebuild my friendships with people who genuinely cared about me. I learned the importance of setting clear boundaries in relationships and recognizing signs of emotional manipulation early on. Today, I'm more alert to sarcasm and manipulative behaviors in my interactions. I surround myself with people who support and respect me, and I'm more assertive about what I consider acceptable. This difficult experience taught me a lot about resilience and the importance of defending my own dignity and well-being. Story 4. Inappropriate teacher behavior. During my senior year of high school, an incident occurred that still bothers me to this day. We had an English teacher, Mrs. Thompson, who was very popular among students, especially the boys. She was young, charismatic, and had a way of making her classes seem less formal and more like casual conversations. At first, we all thought it was amazing because it made the classes more engaging. However, things began to take a strange turn when she started crossing professional boundaries. Mrs. Thompson started adding students to her personal social media accounts. At first, it was just one or two people, but soon it seemed like half the class was on her friend list. She posted personal photos, shared details of her life, and even made comments about students outside of the school context. Some students thought it was cool, while others, like me, started to feel that something was wrong. She sent private messages to some of us, asking about our personal lives, problems at home, and even our relationships. It was uncomfortable, but no one wanted to say anything because we didn't want to lose our friend teacher. The situation worsened when Mrs. Thompson began sharing her personal problems with the class. She would tell us about her fights with her boyfriend, her financial issues, and even her personal insecurities. It was a shock for many of us who were used to seeing teachers as figures of authority and guidance, not as friends sharing their intimate lives. During classes, she would start venting about her problems instead of focusing on the course content. The classroom environment completely changed, and the focus on education was gradually replaced by discussions about her personal life. One day, she asked some of the more attractive boys in the class to help her carry some things to her car after school. They agreed, and soon after, she started sending them messages on Snapchat, commenting on their looks and asking personal questions. The line between what was appropriate and what wasn't was completely erased. I remember one of my friends, Tom, telling me that he felt uncomfortable with the way she treated him, but didn't know how to address it without seeming ungrateful or causing trouble. The situation reached its peak when Mrs. Thompson began inviting some students to events outside of school, like parties and social gatherings. She even suggested that some of us meet her at bars or cafes to talk outside the school environment. This made many of us feel pressured to participate in something we knew was inappropriate, but again, no one wanted to be the student who caused problems. Her behavior started to affect many students' academic performance, as the line between teacher and friend was completely blurred. Finally, some parents began to notice that something was wrong. Some of us decided to tell our parents about Mrs. Thompson's behavior. My parents were horrified and immediately contacted the school. An investigation was launched, and Mrs. Thompson was placed on administrative leave while the case was reviewed. During the investigation, we discovered that she had crossed boundaries on several occasions with other students in her previous classes. She ended up being fired, and the school implemented new policies to ensure teachers maintained appropriate professional distance from students. This experience taught me a lot about the importance of maintaining clear boundaries in all relationships, especially those involving authority figures. I became more aware of the signs of inappropriate behavior and always strive to keep my interactions with authority figures at a professional and respectful level. Additionally, I realized the importance of speaking up when something doesn't feel right, even if it's uncomfortable. I learned that by defending our boundaries and well-being, we can help create a safer and healthier environment for everyone around us. Story 5. Comments about children. During a family party last summer, I witnessed behavior that left me deeply uncomfortable and that I'll never forget. We were all gathered in the garden, enjoying the barbecue and each other's company. My aunt, who was always known for her frank and sometimes inappropriate comments, was present. She always had a habit of saying what she thought without considering the consequences, but that afternoon she crossed all boundaries. As the children played on the lawn, my aunt started making comments about their appearance. She loudly remarked how one of my cousins, only 5 years old, was getting chubby and needed to control his eating. The comment was met with nervous laughter from some adults, but I could see the embarrassment in the boys' parents' eyes. It was clear they were uncomfortable, but no one wanted to cause a scene. My aunt's behavior didn't stop there. She turned to my cousin, an adorable 7-year-old girl, and started commenting on how she was growing up fast and that soon she would have boys chasing after her. It was a disturbing comment, especially considering my cousin's age. I watched her expression change from joy to confusion, as she didn't fully understand what my aunt was insinuating but knew something was wrong. The comments continued, with my aunt making observations about the children's clothes, haircuts, and even their facial expressions. She remarked how one of the boys had sad eyes, which made him less attractive. I was shocked by the lack of sensitivity and implicit cruelty in her words. It was as if she were evaluating the children as objects rather than human beings with feelings. The situation became even more uncomfortable when my aunt started comparing the children. She pointed out how one of the boys was more handsome than the others and how one of the girls had better posture. The children, who had been playing carefree, began to feel self-conscious and stopped playing. I could see insecurity growing in their eyes as they tried to understand why they were being judged this way. The children's parents, including mine, finally decided to intervene. My father, who rarely gets involved in confrontations, approached my aunt and gently asked her to stop with the comments. He explained that her remarks were affecting the children and creating a negative environment. My aunt, visibly irritated, claimed she was just joking and that the children needed to toughen up. Her response only aggravated the situation, but my father remained calm and asked her again to stop. Unfortunately, my aunt didn't seem to understand the gravity of her comments. She spent the rest of the afternoon making subtle and sometimes whispered remarks, as if trying to avoid criticism. However, the damage was already done. The children, who had been having fun, spent the rest of the day more withdrawn and suspicious. The joy we felt at the beginning of the party had been replaced by palpable discomfort. After that party, my parents and I discussed the importance of protecting children from harmful and inappropriate comments. We decided that in the future, it would be necessary to set clear boundaries with my aunt and anyone else who made inappropriate remarks. We learned that while it is difficult to confront family members, it is essential to defend the children's well-being and ensure they grow up in a positive and loving environment. This experience also made me reflect on how comments, even if made seemingly innocuously, can have a lasting impact on children. They are incredibly perceptive and absorb more than we realize. As adults, we have a responsibility to model respectful and positive behavior, including being careful with the words we choose. This story taught me an important lesson about the need to be vigilant and proactive in protecting children. I learned that it is crucial to create an environment where they feel safe, valued, and loved, and where they do not have to worry about unfair judgments or criticisms. Above all, I learned that sometimes we need to be the voice that defends those who cannot yet defend themselves. Story 6. Inappropriate behavior in public places. During what was supposed to be a relaxed and fun night, I found myself in an extremely uncomfortable situation. I went with a group of friends to a local bar, a place we regularly frequented and always felt comfortable. That night, however, would be different. While we were sitting at a table, chatting and laughing, a woman who seemed a bit intoxicated approached. She began interacting with one of my friends, Jake, in a way that made us all clearly uncomfortable. Initially, she seemed just to want to talk, but soon her attitude changed. She started touching his arm repeatedly, leaning in excessively close and whispering things in his ear. Jake tried to politely move away and ignore her advances, but the woman seemed determined. The situation escalated when she started touching his face and shoulders inappropriately. Everyone around our table could see Jake's discomfort, but no one seemed to know how to intervene without causing a bigger scene. I felt powerless, wishing she would recognize the signs of discomfort and back off. The situation reached its peak when the woman tried to kiss Jake, who abruptly got up and left the table to get some air. We felt a momentary relief, but the woman didn't give up and followed Jake outside the bar. Another friend and I decided to follow them to ensure nothing more serious happened. When we found them, Jake was clearly uncomfortable, trying to explain politely that he was not interested. We decided to intervene more assertively. We approached and politely asked her to leave him alone, explaining that her behavior was inappropriate and that Jake was uncomfortable. She reacted defensively, claiming we were overreacting and that she was just having fun. It was a complicated moment because we didn't want to cause a conflict but also couldn't leave our friend in that situation. The woman, finally realizing the seriousness of what we were saying, went back into the bar, visibly irritated. Jake, visibly relieved, thanked us for the intervention. We talked a bit about what had happened and decided it would be better to end the night there. The incident had ruined the mood, and no one was in the spirit to continue the night as planned. We returned home, but the incident stayed in my mind. I began to reflect on how the situation would have been seen if the roles were reversed. If a man had behaved the same way with a woman, the reaction would certainly be much more intense. The bar would probably have taken immediate action, and the man would have been confronted more aggressively. However, because it was a woman harassing a man, the seriousness of the situation seemed to be minimized. I talked about this with Jake the next day, and he shared that he had never felt so vulnerable before. He mentioned that he had always heard stories of women facing harassment in bars but never thought it could happen to him. The incident opened our eyes to the fact that harassment knows no gender, and that men can also be victims of inappropriate and unwanted behaviors. From that day on, we began to be more attentive to behavior around us, regardless of who the victim or aggressor was. We realized the importance of supporting each other and not hesitating to intervene when someone is clearly uncomfortable. We also became more vocal in our social circles about the need for mutual respect and awareness of personal boundaries. I shared this story with some friends and colleagues and was surprised at how many men had experienced similar situations but had never talked about it. I realized there is a sort of stigma or shame in admitting they were harassed by a woman, as if that somehow made them less masculine. However, these stories need to be told so we can change the perception and how we handle harassment in general. It was a valuable lesson for all of us. We learned that it is crucial to recognize and respect others' boundaries, regardless of gender. And more importantly, we understood that everyone has the right to feel safe and comfortable, whether in a bar or anywhere else. Respect and empathy are fundamental to creating an environment where everyone can have fun without fear or discomfort. This experience not only brought us closer as friends, but also made us more active advocates of respectful and appropriate behavior in all aspects of life. Story 7. Control and Tracking. I was in a relationship for about a year when my girlfriend, Laura, started asking me to install a tracking app on my phone. At first, I thought it was just a joke or an excessive demonstration of concern. However, I realized she was serious. She wanted to know where I was all the time, claiming it was for our safety and peace of mind. Initially, I refused. I told her it would invade my privacy and that if we trusted each other, there was no need for a tracking app. She insisted, saying it was a way for us to feel more connected and secure. Reluctantly, I gave in. I installed the app thinking it might calm her down and that, over time, she would realize there was no need for so much control. However, the situation only got worse. Laura began obsessively monitoring my movements. If I stayed more than 5 minutes in a place that wasn't my home or work, she would text me asking where I was, who I was with, and why. If I didn't respond immediately, she would call repeatedly until I answered. Many times, this resulted in heated arguments and feelings of frustration and exhaustion. Once, I went to the supermarket and decided to stop at a cafe for a coffee. There was nothing wrong with that, but Laura started sending me insistent messages. When I didn't respond quickly, she called. I answered and explained where I was, but that didn't calm her down. She began questioning why I hadn't mentioned I was going to the cafe, insinuating I was hiding something. The conversation quickly turned into an argument, and I found myself sitting in a public cafe, trying to calm my girlfriend while everyone around watched. Besides the constant messages and calls, Laura started showing up unexpectedly at the places I was. Once, I went to lunch with a coworker. We were discussing a project when Laura appeared at the restaurant. She said she was passing by and decided to surprise me. But the expression on her face indicated otherwise. She was checking if I was really where I said I would be. The coworker was visibly uncomfortable, and I felt humiliated. The situation began to affect my social life. My friends noticed Laura's controlling behavior and started distancing themselves. They invited me out less, knowing that I was probably being monitored or would have to deal with incessant questions. This isolated me even more and increased my feelings of frustration and loneliness. I decided to have a serious talk with Laura about the control issue and the tracking app. I explained to her how it was affecting our relationship and my life. I tried to make her understand that trust is the basis of any healthy relationship and that her need to monitor me was destroying that trust. However, Laura seemed not to understand or care. She insisted that her actions were out of love and concern. It was then that I realized something had to change. I started researching controlling relationships and toxic behaviors. I read stories of others who had gone through similar situations and realized that for my own well-being, I needed to set clear boundaries. I talked to Laura again, but this time I was firm. I told her that if she didn't stop the controlling behavior, I would have to end the relationship. Laura promised to change, but her actions didn't match her words. She uninstalled the tracking app but continued to ask incessant questions about where I was and with whom. She still showed up unexpectedly at the places I went, and the arguments continued frequently. I realized that her promises of change were empty and that she was not willing to really trust me. After much reflection and with the support of friends and family, I decided I needed to end the relationship. It was a difficult decision because I still loved her and hoped things could improve. However, I knew I couldn't continue in a relationship where my privacy and autonomy were constantly invaded. When I broke up with Laura, she was furious. She tried to make me feel guilty, saying I was abandoning someone who only wanted to love and care for me. But I knew that her love didn't justify the control and mistrust. I left the relationship with a mixed feeling of relief and sadness. In the following months, I worked to rebuild my life and my confidence. I shared my story with friends and colleagues, and many shared similar experiences. I realized that control and manipulation are not exclusive to one gender, and that everyone can be victims of such behavior. Story 8. Emotional Exploitation. My ex used to manipulate my emotions to get what she wanted. She would cry and play the victim, making me feel guilty and obligated to give in. Over time, I realized how much this affected my mental health. It was exhausting and left me constantly anxious. I learned the importance of recognizing the signs of emotional manipulation and setting boundaries to protect my well-being. Story 9. Hypocritical Comments. At work, a colleague always made critical comments about my appearance, but expected no one to comment on hers. She would say things like, "You look tired," in a way that felt like an attack. If I did the same to her, I would be severely criticized. The hypocrisy of this situation left me frustrated and unsure how to handle it. Eventually, I started avoiding interactions with her to protect myself. Story 10. Unhealthy relationships. My girlfriend would send friends to accompany me to social events and then get jealous. I felt monitored and distrusted. This behavior showed a profound lack of trust in the relationship. I tried to talk to her about the importance of mutual trust, but she continued to act possessively. This affected my emotional well-being and made me reconsider the viability of our relationship in the long term. These accounts show how inappropriate behaviors can come from any side and how important it is to discuss these issues openly. Equality and mutual respect are fundamental in all interactions, and everyone must be responsible for their actions. If you enjoyed following this story, don't forget to leave a like. And if you want to follow more stories, reports, and surprising revelations seen on Reddit, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. It will be a pleasure to have you with us.